What's up, everyone? Welcome to Rising Rain Cards. It's your boy White Ranger here with a project that I've been working on for a couple weeks now. Today is part one of a 6-part series that I'm working on. We are going to be working on deck techs for the upcoming Skirmish season. That's right, the Skirmish season is coming up right around the corner. It is April 8th through the 23rd. So just in itself, in 2 weeks, starts the season. We are on the downfall of Outsiders release weekend. I hope everyone's pulls were spectacular. I hope you ended up with one of those error boxes that everybody's been talking about. 14 legendaries in a box. It's crazy seeing what people are pulling. Or a pack with every card being the same. Like, I saw one person that had a pack of all Codex of Fertility non-foils. So it's crazy to see the errors that have been made in production for this set. But I opened my 2 cases here live on stream on the channel over the weekend. I had some decent pulls. I pulled 3 legendary flick knives, all rainbow foil. Had some great boxes and whatnot. So yeah, I hope everyone had a great release weekend. We are on the cusp of the start of the new Skirmish season, so we're going to get into that today on the show. Skirmish season's a great way. I'm a huge fan of Blitz. So all of my local, 3 of them, all 3 of my LGSs here locally are doing Blitz events. So I'm totally looking forward to that. On top of that, there's some great prizing, for this set, for this Skirmish season. There's, Razor's Edge playmats, which look amazing with Arachne on it. There's a rainbow foil young heroes of the new Outsider heroes. And then on top of that, there are cold foil Azalea promos as well. 1 to the winner and 1 to a random raffle to any of the participants. So I am looking forward to that. I need my rainbow foil Riptide and Arachne. I think I love the new Arachne Blitz hero. But in today's video, we are getting into who is my favorite young hero, who I've been on for quite a while, and that is Kassai. Kassai, Centari Sellsword. That's right. She is a warrior. Warrior's been my class for a long time, if you guys know me. I've been on a warrior for over a year and a half now, whether it be Kassai or Dorinthia. So it all just makes sense for this 6-part series to start off with my favorite hero. So yeah, let's get into it. So Kassai's card reads that your second sword attack each turn costs 1 resource less. At the beginning of your end phase, if you have attacked 2 or more times with weapons this turn, create a copper token for each weapon attack that it has hit. So yeah, I mean, really nice. The copper generation in this deck is definitely a huge part and a huge aspect of her little thing. So I really do like that. But she's super fun because she has her weapons and her swords. So let's get into that. Our weapons and equipments that we run with her. So the weapons that we run with her are the Centari Sabers. They are her weapons. They just make sense to run them with her. They read once per turn, 1 resource, and attack. If Centari Saber is defended by an attack action card, it gets +1 until the end of turn, and their base power is 2. You have your left one, your right one, your reverse, your normal. I love these things. Amazing cards. I love the fact that they get the +1, and it's until the end of turn. So later on, when we get to the core main aspect of the deck, we'll explain why that matters a lot. So further going on into equipment, we have our main core pieces for the equipment, and those 4 pieces are Courage of Bladehold, which reads action, destroy Courage Bladehold, and your sword attacks cost 1 less for the turn. And go again. Has temper, so once you block with it twice, it does break. We have Brave Forge Bracers. Once per turn, 1 resource. Your next weapon attack gets +1. You may only activate this ability, though, if a weapon is hurt. Go again. With Battle Worn, it has 2 defense. Crown of Providence. Now, there's a lot of people who go back and forth on what crown or what headpiece to use. I personally like Crown of Providence. It allows you that ability to block for 2. A lot of people are running the crown to make yourself royal, to give yourself a royal Kassai, which is nice. The card draw off of an important card later on is really nice. However, I like the defensive value of Crown of Providence and the ability, which it does read. When you defend with Crown of Providence, you may put a card from your hand or arsenal to the bottom of your deck and draw a card. Has Blade Break. Would be broken if it had Battle Worn, which would be nice, but it would be broken. Just the ability, if somebody comes in with a CNC, being able to get a card out of Arsenal, give yourself a 5th card in hand, or if you accidentally arsenaled the wrong card and you can't get it out, it's a great way to get more cards in your hand and whatnot. So, Crown of Providence in this deck list is definitely the ideal headpiece. The most important equipment, though, is Valiant Dynamo. Valiant Dynamo says at the beginning of your end phase, if you have attacked 2 or more times with weapons this turn, you may remove a -1 counter from Valiant Dynamos. Has Battle Worn, blocks for 1. But with its ability, you can constantly recycle that counter, meaning that you can constantly block 1 damage every turn, whether it be the second Kadachi against a ninja player, whether it just be blocking 1 damage off an attack. That 1 damage is going to help you throughout the game, whether it be 4 or 5 turns in a row. You're preventing 4, 5, 6 health coming off. So it is very important to be able to have that constant ability to block, recycle it, and constantly block with it. And I think that's the most important one. Bladehold is a really good chess piece, but can be swapped out with other things. Brave Forge Bracers, really good arm pieces, but there are other pieces that you can run with it. Crown of Providence, I explained, there's other head pieces that you could run. So this setup that I have here on the screen is definitely a great aspect to run, but there are many options that you can. I feel that this is the best for equipment for the list. Now, we do have a sideboard for equipment. The main sideboard equipment is mainly for the wizard matchups. You're running a full null rune set with boots, gloves, and hood, and your chest piece is Findal's Spring Tunic. It's just one of those, you're not going to be as hugely aggressive against the wizards, whether it be Kano, whether it be Elsa, Islander. You're just not going to be aggressive. So this is going to be able to slow the game down, keep yourself preventing 3 damage on null rune with Arcane Barrier. Tunic, every 3 turns, you're going to get that ability to give yourself 1 resource. So I do feel that this is the ideal sideboard with this deck list. And it's mainly against just the wizards and just the Elsa matchup. I do like running Spring Tunic with the Dash matchup, just to be able to give yourself that extra resource every few turns. It can be pivotal. But most of the time you're going to run the base equipment that we just talked about. Now we're going to get into the main deck. The main deck can be played many different ways. This is just my list. Now, a lot of these cards Everything in the deck is going to be a 2 of. I don't have numbers next to anything, but just know that everything in the list is a 2 of. Starting off, we have Blade Runner. Blade Runner reads, target one-handed weapon gains go again, and your next weapon attack this turn gains +1, 2, and 3 off of blue, yellow, and red. You're giving your Centari Sabers go again, so you guarantee that second attack, plus you're buffing that second attack. So even if they blocked out your first attack, your second attack is coming in for even stronger. This is one of my favorite cards. Love this artwork from this set. Everfest was one of my favorite sets, so it's a really good card. Next up is Hit and Run. Hit and Run has been a staple for most warrior decks. It reads your next weapon attack this turn gains go again. If you have attacked with a weapon this turn, your next attack this turn gains +1, 2, and 3 off of the colors. And it has go again. So if you don't draw into a Blade Runner, if you don't be able to give yourself that first sword go again to get that second swing, this is a great way to just get that first sword go again. But if you don't get that Blade Runner, or if you want to just buff your second attack, it's a great way to be able to buff more to your second attack. I will always feel this deck, its power lies in the second attack. Most of the buffs buff the second attack, and so the second sword attack is always going to come in for higher. Next up after Hit and Run is going to be Slice and Dice. Slice and Dice, and again, from Everfest, I feel Everfest had a lot of support for Kassai. Slice and Dice reads, whenever you would attack with sword or dagger this turn, so it works with the daggers as well, but it reads, if it's your first weapon attack this turn, it gets +1, and if it's your second weapon attack this turn, it gains 1, 2, or 3, depending on the color, and go again. So this one, buffing your first attack by 1, and then your second attack by even more. So again, going back to that second attack with the sword being a hugely important high power, high damage attack. A lot of people tend to block out the first one and not realize how strong that second sword's going to be. Next up is my favorite card in any warrior deck. I don't run it in Dorinthia because Dorinthia can never get her second attack off most of the time, and there's other better reactions for Dorinthia, but this is my favorite reaction because nobody ever expects it, because they expect everything else, all the other warrior reactions, but this is my favorite one. In the Swing. In the Swing reads, play in swing only if you have attacked 2 or more times with weapons this turn. Target weapon gets +2, +3. I only run the yellow and the red in this deck list because of just the blue only gives you a +1, and you're not really care if the weapon hits. You're just really getting that extra buff and whatnot. So the +1 off the blue one I don't feel is important, but the yellow and red, just getting that extra damage in that somebody, because you're buffing that second attack. Let's say you're swinging for 5, they block 3, play that red one, they're taking 5 because now you got that buff. In the Swing is my favorite card in the entire game when it comes to reactions, because of how good the ability is, and nobody expects it. So now we're going to get into the core main of the deck. Now that was the main deck, but we have the core main, and this utilizes Kassai's hero ability of gaining copper. Copper is a very important piece. Now the main deck we just talked about is important because of how much power it provides, but the main aspect to this deck is the copper generation and copper usage. First up in the core main deck is Spoils of War. Read your next Weapon attack this turn gains +2 and go again. And then whenever a weapon you control hits this turn, create 2 copper and has go again. Now this card is great due to the fact that it buffs your first attack and gives it go again, so you're guaranteed your second attack. But what it does is now people know that copper is a huge important thing for Kassai in the deck and whatnot. So people tend to block out the spoils of war turns. So it gives you an ability to get a turn where they're not playing anything. So, but it's important because of the simple fact of if you can stack a Spoils of War with a Blade Runner or a Spoils of War with a Slice and Dice, just get that first attack even buffed more. You're stripping more cards from their hand, or you're dealing damage to them because they're not going to want to take that damage off of Spoils of War because they want to prevent the copper generation. Because Spoils of War is a huge copper generation. It could potentially create 4 copper a turn, but with Kassai's ability, if both weapons hit, you're creating 6 coppers in one turn. And that's a huge important thing for the last card that we get to in the core main deck. The next card in the core main is going to be Outland Skirmish. We run the blue and the red. I don't run yellow. It is good because it does give you a buff, but I feel that there's other cards that takes the spot of the yellow, and the yellow isn't as important. The card reads your next one-handed weapon gains +1 with the blue, +3 with the red. And the next time a weapon attack hits this turn, create a copper. And it has go again. Now, the reason that this is important is it does not matter whether it's the first sword that attacks and hits or if it's the second one. The ability of the next. So it doesn't matter. And so typically on the turn that you're going to play an Outland Skirmish, you're typically going to gain at least 2 copper, one off of Kassai's ability and one off of Outland Skirmish. So it's really good just for the copper generation and the buff. Now we're going to get into how we use the copper. Cash in. Hugely important. You may destroy 4 copper, 2 silver, or 1 gold. You may destroy 4 copper, 2 silver, and 1 gold you control rather than pay cash-in's cost. And if you do, you draw 2 cards. Well, it doesn't matter whether you do or not. You draw 2 cards, and it has go again. This allows you mid to late game, depending on when you draw it. It gives you a 2 block, which is okay. But the important thing with cash in is that you can block with 2 cards from your hand on that turn. You can block with 3 cards in your hand on that turn. Your opponent's like, oh, they only have 1 card left in their hand. What are they going to do? They're just going to arsenal it. No, you're going to play cash in, and now you have 2 cards in your hand. And with all luck, you're going to draw a blue and a red Blade Runner. Give yourself go again. You're swinging your 2 times, and now your opponent's, completely forgot about that, or they're sidetracked and they're, you played a little bit of mind games with them. And I love Warrior because of the mind games. So cash in is a very important thing to be able to get yourself that extra card draw. Because even if, let's say you have 4 cards in hand, you play cash in, now you have 5. And now you have that 5th card, and that 5th card can be really important. And now you're playing with a 5-card hand, which is a huge advantage against your opponent. Whether it be extra buffs, whether it be extra reactions, anything whatsoever, those extra card draws is going to be hugely important. Now, the last piece of the core main is going to be the Kassai specialization. This is the game winner. If your opponent's at less than 10 health, this is the ideal card to play because they're going to block with every card in their hand, and that would be Blood on Her Hands. It's the Kassai specialization. It says, as an additional cost to play Blood on Her Hands, destroy any number of coppers you control. For each copper you destroy, choose a mode, and you may choose a mode twice. Mode 1 is target one-handed weapon gets +1 for the turn. Mode 2, target one-handed weapon gets go again while attacking this turn. And mode 3, target one-handed weapon may attack twice this turn and has go again. So, the fact that you can potentially attack 4 times with your swords in a turn for 3 each weapon, if your opponent's at 12 health, it's a very important, great card, because they have to, if they don't block anything, they're dead. But ideally, if they're under 10, it's even better, because they're forced to block on that blood on their hands turn, and it's very important. Now you can crack your chest piece to be able to make sure your weapons are free, and they cost an additional resource less. So that way you're not having to pay resources, and you can just play all your buffs that turn. However, I tend to play a little bit differently, where if I can blood on her hands early, I will pay with the blue from hand rather than cracking my chest. And that's just so that way later on, I still have my chest piece up. So if I have a blood on her hands in Arsenal, I can play it with nothing and be able to not pay anything for the turn. So it's a very important, just depends on the situation, on what you do, how you do it. It all just depends in those situations. But blood on her hands is a very important piece to the deck, just for the ability to get multiple attacks with your swords, which could potentially be game winner. I've won many games with blood on her hands. So that's the core main deck and the main deck. Now these additional cards that are coming up next are just cards that are really good in the deck, but these are cards that can be swapped out. The first card up is Glint the Quicksilver. A lot of people are going to be like, oh, that needs to be the core main. It is a great card. It's one of my it's a great card. It's really ideal in a Dorinthia deck. In this deck, because there's so many ways to give go again, I don't feel it's hugely important. But the card draw off of the reprise makes it worth running in the deck. But I don't feel it's absolutely necessary. Next up on the list is Precision Press. I know I'm not saying that correctly, but Precision Press, yellow and red. Now remember, everything in the list is a 2 of, because it is Blitz, but every card in here is a 2 of. Precision Press says your next sword or dagger attack this turn has go again and piercing 3. Piercing 3, a new mechanic they introduced in Dynasty, which means that if they defended by an equipment, it gets +1, 2, or 3, depending on the color. But this is just an alternative way of being able to give your weapon go again. Plus, if you're playing against a fridge deck, like Guardians, Brutes, another Warrior, this just prevents them from being able to block with their equipment without suffering, because if they do, they get consequences. I've shut down a lot of people with not wanting to block with their armor because of Precision Press having the right attack. Especially against a Briar, it's really good just to give that go again to your first one and piercing 3, just to be able to make sure your opponent's not going to block out with an equipment. Next up is Sharpened Steel. This is just strictly to buff your first attack. We were just talking earlier about how a lot of the attacks buff the second one. Sharpened Steel is the way to be able to buff your first one. Because, you know, it reads your next weapon attack this turn gets +3 and go again. For me, this just gets that extra buff to your first one rather than your second one, because now your opponent has to think about which one they're going to block to prevent the damage. So I love Sharpened Steel. I had other alternatives that I could have put into that spot, and I've always tested with that one spot, whether it be Sharpened Steel or other cards, but I've always felt that Sharpened Steel is just a little bit better, due to the fact that you can buff it for your first one. Now, you can play it after your first one attacks, but I always felt the Sharpened Steel is just slightly better when you're attacking with your first sword. Now, the next up cards, these next few cards are good alternatives. Like I was just saying, the last 3 cards that I was just saying, these would be great cards to be able to swap in, swap out. It just depends on how you want to build the deck and how you want to run the deck. But the first one up is Puncture. Puncture does the same thing. Puncture is a great card that came out of Dynasty, but it's very situational, I believe. I think it's a great reaction, but I feel it's situational because it does read target sword or dagger attack gains +3 and piercing 1. Piercing, like I just said, was if it's defended by an equipment, it has +1. So I feel Puncture is really good in certain situations, because then it punishes your opponent for blocking with their equipment after they've already blocked with it. Precision Press, as we just talked about, prevents them from it, but Puncture punishes them for it. But it all just depends on how you want to run it. I've always tested with the cards. I prefer Precision Press, but you may test with it and decide that Puncture is the better way to go. We were just talking how coppers are a huge aspect to this deck, and one of the best copper generators in the game to me is High Striker. High Striker reads the next time an attack you control hits this turn, create copper. X copper. X copper can be 2, 4, or 6, depending on what color you run. Yellow is the one that I have showed, because it creates 4 coppers on a hit. Now, it does not matter whether it's your first one or the second one. You play it before your first one, and your opponent typically will block out because they don't want you having that copper. I used to run a high copper level build with Kassai, and I used to get up to 25, 30 copper each game, because once you get over 6, your opponent tends to forget about how many coppers you have and what you can do each turn. But High Striker is really important if you want huge amount of coppers in the deck and on the field. Great turn would be Cash In into Blood on Her Hands. I've had those turns. It feels amazing. I just feel that the more aggressive, Blitz is more of the aggressive format, so I feel that Blitz is definitely, High Striker is great, but I feel the more higher attacks are a little bit better. Last card on the good alternatives is Run Through. Run Through reads target sword attack gains Go Again, and your next sword attack gets this turn gains +2. Run Through is great for Dorinthia. I have always loved that card in Dorinthia, but I feel it's buffing the second attack again. And it's going back to what we were talking about, buffing the second attack. It's important, just so that way they cannot... So they typically will take the higher amount of damage on the second attack. That is a good replacement for the Glinted Quicksilver. Puncture is a good replacement for Precision Press. And High Striker is a good replacement for Sharpened Steel. So that is the deck list that I've put together for Kassai. The good alternatives, the core main, what's good in the deck, the main deck, your weapons, your equipment. The deck list will be in the link, in the information below. But before you guys get going, I have another major announcement. I should have said that a little bit earlier, so that way you guys stuck through the whole video. But a major announcement is with the ongoing situation with TCG Player. I sell on TCG Player. It is under Rise and Reign on TCG Player. However, a lot of issues have come up with TCG Player, with their union, with the way they're treating their employees, and whatnot. So because of that, I've seen a decrease in my sales due to people not purchasing cards off TCG Player because of the way they have been treating their employees. So because of that, I've decided to start my own website. It is www.riseandreincardshop.com. It is all the cards that I have from my personal collection that I sell on TCG Player. It will now be put onto my own website. You guys can check it out. Greatly appreciate the visit. If you guys decide to make a purchase, awesome, amazing. I'd appreciate it. But I just feel with what's going on in TCG Player world and aspect that I think it's the right time to move myself away from them and start my own website to be able to sell my personal collection and cards that I pull and whatnot. The website is live already. More inventory is getting listed on a daily basis. There's a lot of outsider cards already on there and whatnot, and more being added even as you're watching this video. More cards are being uploaded. I apologize for burping right now. But more cards are being uploaded and more cards are being added to the inventory even as you're watching this video. So go check it out. The website's on the screen right here. Plus it'll be down in the information below. So yeah, with that being said, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the alert button so you can get notified when my next video comes up. But on Wednesday, we will be doing our Deck Tech Part 2 for Ninja. That's right, Ninja. The deck list that I've put together works really well with multiple heroes. So we'll go over that on Wednesday. But we have our deck list put together for Ninja. So I hope you guys have a good rest of your week. I will see you guys on Wednesday.